Hey guys, welcome back to Life on Purpose. I'm your host Heather and we are on episode 13. I cannot believe that we've been doing this for 3 months. If you've been here from the beginning of this particular type of video, it's been 3 months, and I'm praying that these episodes will give you just a little nugget to implement into your life to help you walk closer with the Lord and be on purpose for Him. I hope it's been good for you. It's been really good for me. I've made some changes just researching and preparing and praying to do these videos, so I hope that it has been helpful and encouraging to you as well. Today, we're talking about teenagers. I know that evokes so many emotions. Like, some are great, some are like scary, some people haven't gotten into teenage years yet and they don't know what to expect. Some people have just recovered from teenagers and some are in the middle of it. We're gonna be talking about teenagers today and how we as parents can influence them and bring them up in the Lord in the best way possible in the culture that we live in. So we're about to tackle this. Are you ready? Let's do this. So if you don't know me, I have 4 children. One is 28, one is 27, one is 18, and one is about to be 16 next month. The 2 older ones are girls and the 2 younger ones are boys. So I have 28 years of experience with children and have gone through all the stages of parenting and still going through it with the 4th one. And my parenting has been unique. My husband and I had children very young at age 22 and 23, and then we have this 10-year gap and then had 2 more. And the girls were first and the boys were second. So it made some things difficult in some aspects and it made some things easier in others. Unfortunately, our girls were kind of like the guinea pigs of our parenting. I feel like we were children having children at 22 and kind of in survival mode a lot. And we kind of grew up and learned how to become parents through our daughters. And so there's a whole lot of things that I would have changed looking back now, raising our daughters, if I had known, and I just didn't know. So hopefully you might be able to avoid some of the pitfalls of parenting that my husband and I went through and gain an advantage on the whole parenting game because, there were no classes that we took on parenting. We just kind of were thrown into it. But we have made major changes to the way that we parent our sons in our, round 2 of parenting. And I believe that they've made major changes in their lives for the better. And so hopefully you'll get something out of this today. A couple of things that we have learned. First off, I would say that when it comes to your teenagers, they do not need you less the older they get. They need you more. I think a lot of times we think that our kids need us a ton when they're little, they're attached to our hips, and then as they get more independent, they actually don't need us as much. And while it's true that you don't need to tie their shoes for them anymore or pour their cereal, they can do some of that stuff on their own. They don't need you less. The things that our teenagers are encountering in today's culture and society need intentional parenting more than ever before. We need to know our kids' friends. We need to be intentional in their lives. We need to know what they're watching, what they're listening to, what they're thinking. They need intentional time in conversation to get guidance and wisdom from us as parents, because otherwise the voices they're getting are TikTok and Friends. That's not wisdom. We need to be sharing what we know and not have their only influence be online or in their friends. Now, in order to foster this environment where kids will want to talk to you and open up to you as teenagers, you need to have spent time together, involvement in their lives, interest in their lives. They need to know that it's a safe place to come and talk to you. You don't want to be the last person they want to talk to when they're struggling. They need to know that they're heard. One of the mistakes I made early on with our daughters was that anytime they would tell me something that I knew was wrong, like I knew that what they were thinking was totally flawed, not wise, wasn't going to let them do it, I didn't let them fully explain what they were thinking. Even though I kind of already knew what they were thinking, I didn't let them say it fully all the way to the end. I wasn't really listening to understand and hear them. I was listening to correct them. And while I was right and their thinking was most often wrong, they ultimately just felt like I was brushing them off. And that's where you get the "you just don't understand." That's when that comes from a teenager, because they don't feel like they've been listened to at all. And really, I wasn't really listening to them. Now, I wasn't going to change my mind. I knew what was right. I knew as a parent that what I needed to say, if I was saying no, or if I was saying this isn't a good idea, I knew that was right. But a more effective way is to completely hear them out, knowing they're usually wrong, and then tell them, I hear you. I understand where you're coming from. I know it's hard. And then tell them your perspective and the wisdom, and say things like, have you thought this through? Have you talked about this? Have you researched whether this is appropriate in the situation? Have you consulted the Lord? Have you read the Bible? And then ultimately, if you have to say no to something they're asking for, or something they want to do, somewhere they want to go, you can say to them, I've heard you. I understand. I totally even get why you want to do it, or why you want to watch it or listen to it. I just can't agree with it because it's not right, and this is why. This is what the Bible says about it. This is what the Lord says. This is what's going to affect your mind. I do understand where you're coming from, but ultimately, as a parent, I'm responsible for the way that I parent you. I'm accountable to the Lord for the decisions I make for you and the way that I raise you. And in this situation, I'm going to have to say no. It doesn't mean I don't hear you. I think that goes a long way. For a teenager, they might still get upset because you're saying no. That's just part of parenting. I mean, you're not going to be their friend. And frankly, you're not supposed to be their friend and make sure that they're never disappointed. You're not supposed to make sure they're always happy and get everything they want. That's not good parenting. Good parenting means loving them, even in the hard stuff, and sometimes saying no. But at least they know that you've heard them, and at least they know that they have a voice in the home, so that once you've established open lines of communication where they feel safe to come and talk to you, or they don't feel like it's just going to be a judgment zone, and that they can trust that you have their best interest at heart. You're not just there to spoil all their fun, but there's actually a reason why, and a good one behind what you say yes to and what you say no to, and the advice that you give. Now you have the ability and the opportunity to ask questions about what they're thinking and be involved in their lives because they feel heard. Okay, number 2. As I said in the previous video, if you watched that on parenting younger ones, if not, you can go back and watch on how to start out. This tip carries into parenting teenagers immensely. You, as their mom and dad, are the primary source of raising your kids up spiritually. You are primarily responsible for raising them up in the Lord. It is not the church's responsibility. It is not the youth pastor's responsibility. It is not the senior pastor's responsibility or the volunteers. Those guys get your kids maybe 1 to 2 hours a week, and that is not enough to instill in them how they should be trained up in the Lord and the importance of following Jesus. That is your job to do on a daily basis. Not once a week on Sunday when your family goes to church. It needs to be implemented into your lives as a family daily. That's how they're going to know it's actually important, and it's the primary thing that you as parents want to instill in them, and you're living it. You will definitely speak volumes louder by your actions than what you actually say to your children. They are watching you. They will watch. Are you reading your Bible? Are you spending time in prayer? Do you pray more than just thank you for the food? Or do you pray more than just, hey, help us out of this situation, or heal someone from an illness or a sickness? Those are good prayers, but if that's the only time you're praying and not involving God in your daily life on everything, then they're not going to see the importance of doing it themselves. We've got to walk the walk more than we talk the talk. Now, I'm not saying that the church isn't good. We need to be in church, and those youth pastors and senior pastors and volunteers, all they're doing is adding and reinforcing what you're teaching at home. But it's your job to disciple your children to know and love God. This is a big responsibility for us as parents, to be walking our walk more than talking it. Because if your life doesn't reflect one that is wholeheartedly devoted to becoming a disciple and follower of Jesus, why would they want to do it? Ultimately, it won't really matter what you say if you are not doing it yourself. Yikes. So, discipleship of our kids, quantity and quality time with our kids, and intentional listening are some of the most important things that you can consider doing with your teenagers. Make your voice be something they want to hear. Okay, so now we're going to get a little bit practical, and I am most definitely going to step on some toes here, but it's just my experience, and you have to know your kids and what they can handle and what they can't. But here's where I feel like so many parents go very wrong. We try and live in our culture and go with the flow of our kids because it's very hard to go against the flow, especially when our kids want to go with the flow. What do I mean? I mean social media and phones. I do not believe any teenager should have access to Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, none of it. Our sons do not have TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. They don't have any of it on their phones, and they're 15 and 18. They cannot download an app at all without requesting permission. It is blocked on their phone. There is the ability to do this with parental controls. Why? Social media is causing an epidemic of low self-esteem, depression, suicide, comparison, robbing our children of joy in their lives. The actual joy of being a child. There is nothing on social media that is necessary for our children to grow up and thrive in society. I realize that everyone says, but everyone's doing it. But you know what? Everyone isn't doing it. Our family isn't doing it. Our boys have grown up just fine without all of the social media. In fact, I think they're better for it. Now, do our kids want it? Of course they want it. Did my kids want it? Of course they want it. Do they still want it? Of course they still want it. And they're gonna feel left out. But I care more about my child's sense of well-being, sense of identity, sense of purpose, their peace of mind. I care more about those things than allowing my child to endlessly scroll and potentially see things they should never see, or feel things they should never feel, or get involved in conversations and comments that are not appropriate or are mean and cruel. They don't need it. And in fact, it does more harm than good, in my opinion. I get that this is a hard sell because that is dramatically going against the flow. But not one day has gone by that I regret not letting them have it. So it is something to consider. You can get them something that's called a Gab phone. It looks just like an iPhone, but it doesn't have access to the internet. They can text, they can call, you can implement the phone numbers, you can decide if they can send photos or not, or there are parental controls on iPhones, but you have to be very savvy because there's a lot of ways of getting around it, and you can't just decide that my kids know more technology than me and I'll never be able to keep up. Yes, you can. Use AI. There's so many ways to find out how to do things. And it is our job as parents to know more or as much about technology than our kids do. It's not an excuse to just say, I don't know how to do it. Find out how to do it. They only get one childhood. Don't let social media control it. Okay, next, this is also going to strike a nerve. And boy, I hesitate to say it because I know I'm going to get a lot of pushback on this. And I understand the pushback actually. But I don't believe in the public school system at all anymore. And here's why. I know there are some amazing godly teachers that are in the public school system, and I commend them for trying to be a light in a dark world. But a lot of those teachers' hands are tied when it comes to what they can and can't do with their kids, what they can and can't say. Now, privately on their own, they can pray for these kids, and that's amazing. They can encourage them, they can love on these kids. But what are the chances that your child is going to get one of those teachers for every year of their childhood? We're talking 13 years here and multiple teachers in junior high and high school. We're placing our children in an environment that they are not ready to handle and do not know how to process. It's like taking your child on a trip and making them carry your giant suitcase instead of their little one when they're 5. They can't handle that much baggage, and they are being influenced and groomed in some cases and taught things that are so unbiblical and downright evil sometimes. And when they're little, they think that everything their teacher says is 100% gospel truth. In fact, they'll come home and argue with you as the parent, saying that their teacher said something, and they'll believe their teacher over you because they think their teacher's always right. Now, I'm not saying that there are no, small towns or somewhere that have conservative teaching in public schools anymore, but it's nowhere that I've seen that I've lived. And the vast majority of America, the teaching has become totally unacceptable. Now, I know not everyone can afford private school, not everyone can homeschool, and even private schools may not even be a great option. I understand there are unique situations. I am just saying that you are walking into a battle and war zone with your kids when they are in public school. And if you're choosing to send them there, you need to know the battle that you are taking on. I never faced the kind of stuff that kids have to face today. Even our daughters who are in their mid to late 20s did not have to face the extent of what our son's generation is facing, and it's not getting any better. So if you have the ability to not send your kids to public school, I would highly recommend you consider it. It doesn't mean that they're in a bubble when they're in a private Christian school or even homeschool, because our boys are in a university model school. It's a half homeschool and half in school, and it is not immune to the world at all. There have been major things we have had to encounter, but it's 1,000 times better than if they had been in public school. And we tried public school. Our daughters went to public school. We've done it all. We've done public school. Our boys even went to public elementary. We've done private school, university, homeschooling. We've done all of them. And so you need to know your children and know the environment that they are going to thrive in, and not just give into the cultural push to just do what everyone else is doing. We need to fight for our children's mental health. We need to fight for our kids growing up. We need to fight for the 35-year-old kid who looks back on their life with the least regrets possible. And they're not fighting for their 35-year-old self because they're kids and they're only thinking about today. So that is your job to think of them in the future. What is going to best serve them now so that when they are adults, they are following Jesus, they are mentally stable, they're confident, they have self-esteem, they know who they belong to, they know the image that they bear. These are things that the public school system and social media completely dismantling in our children. We need to fight against the current culture and what is influencing them. We need to be in the world, but not of the world. And being in the world doesn't mean we have to participate in everything that is offered. Some things are not good and not worth it. So what can we do with our kids to instill a love for Jesus and discipleship and a reason to go against the flow of culture? There's a couple of things that I love. One is getting them involved in service and serving others through your church or whatever. Get them outside their bubble, showing them what's going on in their community and in the world, and where they can serve people that have less than them and where people are in need. They can do this locally through your church. You can do this on mission trips in the summers. They can volunteer at faith-based community service projects, but put them to work serving other people and fostering a love and care for others. Secondly, I highly recommend family camp, even with teenagers. There are amazing family camps. I'm sure they're all over the country. I know they are. The one that we have fallen in love with is called Campus by the Sea, which is on Catalina Island off the coast of California, off of Long Beach. One of the reasons that we love it so much is that there's no cell service. When you get out to this little cove on the island, there's no cell service, and they don't give you the Wi-Fi password. And initially, it's a little crazy because as you're going on the ferry out there, about halfway there, everything just dies on your phone. And you go through panic and withdrawals because we're so addicted to our phones. But here's the deal. No one is on their phones, ever, because you have no access. I'm sure this is going to change at some point because Elon Musk will launch a Starlink, and at some point there will be a satellite and that will take that away. And I'm actually not looking forward to that day because you've got 18-year-olds hanging out with 5-year-olds. You've got fathers hanging out with other fathers and their kids instead of answering emails. You have moms who are not scrolling Instagram or TikTok. They're playing in the sand with their 12-year-olds, with their 13-year-olds. No one is on a phone. You just have families communicating with each other. You have kids sitting at tables actually talking to each other instead of looking at their phones for an entire week. And they're worshiping and they're learning about Jesus and they're making relationships and friendships. And it's like stepping back in time for a bit, for just 1 week, where they just interact with people and build community. Our kids, who are teenagers, our boys, love it so much. In fact, so much so, our 18-year-old is working there all summer. He absolutely loves it. We look forward to it every year. I cannot recommend it enough. It's called Campus by the Sea. Okay, as far as TV, movies, music, all that kind of stuff, there's hardly anything that's worth watching anymore, it seems. But I did mention this in a previous video. If you can get access to VidAngel. It's an app, it's a monthly subscription. There are lots of different shows and movies on there. Not all of them because some are blocked, but there are several where you can go into the app and you can take out the junk. You can remove language, you can remove kissing scenes, you can remove sex scenes, you can remove anything you want to remove. You can take out violence or anything that you don't want to be watching and that you don't want your kids watching. It allows you to pick and choose everything that you want to take out. And that has allowed our family to enjoy some of the entertainment that have good stories without all of the junk. Okay, as far as the internet, we have parental controls on our internet system at home. We use Griffin. It allows us to turn off the internet at certain times, like overnight. It allows us to have certain homework times where the TV doesn't work, but they can get on a computer to do homework. It just allows you to have a little bit of control over how much access our kids have to the internet. We also have a thing called Covenant Eyes that is on each of our phones, including mine and including my husband, where every day we get a report. It's either green, yellow, or red, and it will alert you if there's any questionable websites that have been accessed on any of our phones, and it just helps us all keep each other accountable. We also have a no phones at the dinner table rule. We used to tell our daughters that if they were caught texting at the dinner table, we were allowed to take their phones and write the next text, which is really funny for the parents and so not funny for the teenagers. I think that only happened once to one of our daughters, and they never brought their phones to the table again. It just fosters an environment where you can sit and talk as a family and not be distracted by your phones and just unplug for 30 minutes while you're talking. That's a good rule to have, and that means for us too. We cannot be bringing our phones to the dinner table and being on our phones. That is not allowed. So look, I realize that all of this sounds extreme, and you know what? In some senses, it is a bit extreme, and it's unfortunate that we live in a world where we have to take stands like this and where we have to be somewhat extreme, but here we are. This is the world we live in, and if we're gonna protect our kids, if we're gonna have them grow up and be that 35-year-old that lives with as few regrets as possible, We have to be intentional with our teenagers today. We cannot let them just do their own thing. We cannot just say okay for the sake of peace, or I just want them to be happy, or I don't want them to be mad at me. Now, you don't have to do all of these things. You can do one, you can do none of them. It's just my take from someone who has walked through it 4 times. This stuff is worth it. And let me be clear, we have not gone unscathed as a family with the enemy breaking through at times and causing chaos. We have walked through some really hard things. This stuff just helps not make it worse, honestly. It is a hard thing to raise teenagers and kids these days, but I believe that the things that we have implemented have made a big difference. And I think that they are worth it. I think they're worth considering. I think our kids are worth it, and our God is worth it. We are not called to be conformed to this world. We are called to be the opposite of that. And if we are going to be the opposite of being conformed to this world, it will mean not participating in everything that the world has to offer and giving things to our kids as they're ready to handle them, not exposing them to things when they are not ready to handle it. You need to know your child and what they can handle and what they can't. And I think you need to err on the side of caution when you're considering what they can handle, because the world will say they can handle a whole lot more than they actually should be handling. I know this was a tough one and not fun, but we can't be asleep to this. We need to fight for our kids and fight for the right thing, even when it's hard. If you have questions or comments, I would welcome them. Share any tips and tricks that you have done to combat the culture that our kids are growing up in below. I would love for our community to share with each other ways that we can build each other up in this area. And if you would click the like button, it actually helps the algorithm get shared to more people on YouTube, and share it with anyone else that's raising up teenagers right now. Otherwise, I hope you are having a great week. Fight for your kids. It's hard, but really worth it. You will not regret it. I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching. See you next week.